What's up, guys? Welcome back. My name is Mike and this is Hidden Creek Homestead. For you guys that have been following along, you know we just put up this shop and I have my welding machine behind me, but I don't have a receptacle set up for it to plug it in. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. We're gonna be installing a 30 amp outlet or receptacle for our welding machine. We're gonna be installing this in a little bit of an unconventional method. All right, so normally this welding machine, this is a Miller 215 Multimatic. The plug that they use is called a 650R. This cart right behind me here is a welding cart that I built a while ago for this machine. I wanted a cart to be able to move the welding machine around since I like to do things around the shop. Often the cord that comes in the back of a welding machine is not really long enough to move around with you. So I came up with this idea to have it on a cart and to have my welding cart have its own electric panel where I could use a different type of cord that's readily available to work with me wherever I go. So what came to mind is I'm a real big proponent of using what I have on hand, and I had a long 50-foot generator cord on hand, which is capable of, it's a 30 amp cord. So I wanted to use the generator cord to power my electric cart. So let me get you turned around and I'll show you what we did. So here's the back of our machine. Here's a little electric panel that we wired up. It's got two circuits on it. Actually, it's got one 30 amp circuit for the welding machine itself, and then it's got two 20 amp circuits individually for a standard receptacle down here if I want to run a grinder or something on that, and then one is a spare. So we've got our pigtail right here for our welding machine, and that's what that looks like. That's the 650R. And then a pigtail coming out of our electric panel is what's called an L1430, and this is a common configuration for generator cords. So basically I would take a generator cord, plug the female in right here, and then I have 50 feet of travel to power this whole setup. So what we're gonna do today is we're actually gonna wire up two boxes, one right on top of another. We're gonna have a L1430 receptacle for the generator cord, and it's also gonna connect to the 650R receptacle for the welding machine. Why both? Well, the welding machine itself, a lot of the times I'm gonna be welding right here where that cart is, parts and stuff and fabricating little things. But if I do want to, so I'll just use the 650R plug that comes in the back of the machine and plug it right into the wall with the cord that comes out of the welding machine. Should I want to move the cart to the other end of the shop, which is 40 feet long, now I can, you know, plug it into that L1430, that 30 amp receptacle, and wheel my cart around. I'd rather use the actual dedicated welding plug because a voltage drop, you know, when you have a long run of cable, 50 feet, like we're going to be using for that generator cord, you have a little bit of voltage drop. It's not going to be a really big deal for the type of welding that we're doing. We do a lot of automotive stuff and just tinkering around. But if you're doing like real heavy duty production welding, then you know that 50 amp, or excuse me, that 30 amp 50-foot cord is probably not the greatest idea. For our use, it's going to be completely fine. So here's the materials that we're going to be using. We have two 4-inch boxes. I got the deep style boxes because our receptacle is kind of deep. We have a cover plate for this receptacle. We have our L1430 and a cover plate for that receptacle. Both boxes are going to get connected by these nipples right here. We have lock nuts that will connect both of them. We've got our 30 amp breaker, and we've got our wire here, which in our case for a 30 amp circuit, we're using number 10 wire. One more thing I forgot to mention. The reason I'm using, well, an important reason for using the generator cord and having the electric panel on that cart is because I needed what's called a neutral, which is that white wire in the circuit, or the grounded conductor. See, welding machines run off of just a regular 240 circuit, which is two hot legs and a ground. They don't utilize that white neutral wire. So in order to have that standard receptacle on the cart or be able to power my grinder or whatever, I needed a neutral. So that's why I thought to use the generator cord. I'd have my two hot legs in there, the neutral grounded conductor, and the ground itself. So that's why I chose to do that. I apologize if any of this is like Greek to you guys, because I know I'm using like a lot of terminology that maybe you may or may not have heard of before, and I apologize for that. But it'll all kind of make sense when you see what we do. So we've got our 3 wires coming out of our receptacle. The white wire, as you see here, is actually not a neutral, as it would indicate by being white. It's a second hot leg. So what we have to do in that case is we have to re-identify this with black tape as another hot leg. The reason I use this white wire is because, again, I just happen to have some number 10 wire that's 3 conductor here, so I just utilize what I have, and we're just going to re-identify it by taping it black. Now normally I would use stranded wire for something like this as opposed to this solid, really thick, hard to bend wire. Stranded wire is obviously the same gauge, so you don't have to worry about any type of current issues, but it's just a lot more flexible and easy to work with when you're in tight spaces like this. But again, being a little bit cheap and I happen to have this on hand and it'll work just fine, we're just gonna have to wrestle with it a little bit more. So we're gonna slip a neutral in here. Bottom box. All right, so we've got our top receptacle mounted. We're gonna get our bottom receptacle mounted and put a cover on that. We've got a little bit of a pigtail coming out of here, getting ready to go into our box, and we're almost ready to get into the electric panel. All right, so we've got our 2 boxes all together. I'm gonna leave the cover off of this bottom receptacle because I wanna be able to screw this box to the wood, and I'll probably take this one off so I can screw to the top also. I'm gonna go ahead and go in the panel now and start getting this wired up. All right guys, so here's my little disclaimer. If you're not a licensed electrician or extremely confident in what you're doing, please keep your hands out of one of these things because it can hurt you and can kill you actually. So please consult a licensed electrician if you're gonna do anything like this. Alright, so if we did everything correctly, we should have 240 volts between those two, which we do. We should have 240 volts between these two. We should have 120 between those two. And we should have 120 between those two, which we do. We should have 120. We got it. So one really cool thing about these little Miller welding machines is that I forget what the name for these plugs are, but they're interchangeable. Basically, they kind of screw on to the factory cord. So if you don't have 240 volt service available, you can use a standard 110 wall outlet. It just, for heavier work and thicker metals, it might not weld as well. So I'm opting for a 240. I'm going to switch my plug out now. So I'm a pretty big fan of Miller welders, but my one gripe is straight plugs, especially since you have interchangeable ends. I mean, Miller, if you're watching this video, which I doubt you are, angled plugs, guys, come on. Fortunately, I have an adapter. All right, let's see if we have juice. There we go.